the radio guy, Mike Prince. Welcome to another episode of the Mike Prince Show. We are fortunate to have on the Brazos Valley Schools Credit Union hotline, Coach Dawson Odums of the Southern Jags. How you doing, Coach, and welcome back to the show.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure.
All right. Well, sir, look, we are excited to have you on with us. First and foremost, how are you and the family health-wise with everything that's been going on?
We're doing great. Just trying to be safe in every aspect. Be careful of your surroundings. Wear your mask. Everything they're saying do, you try to do it, but there's no 100% policy or procedure in place. You just got to, I tell our guys and coaches, you just got to stay prayed up and trust the process and believe in it, but you can't stop living. We keep living. We keep trying to do all the right things and just hope that all the people around us are doing the same thing.
Yes, sir. When you talk about doing the right things, that's on and off the field. You have to be accountable, of course, as student-athletes with their grades, then the responsibility of literally, in this day and time, being your brother's keeper when we're talking about this COVID. And we know it's been hitting the African-American community far different than what has hit most others. Nonetheless, it's still hitting everyone with ferocity. Of late, some of the Power 5 institutions now have come to the grips in the reality of this thing and deciding to shut it down. When you hear that news, Coach, are you saying finally they caught the picture? What goes through your mind when you hear that they're following the lead of what the conference throughout the Southwestern Athletic Conference has established?
I don't really think it changes anything. I just believe that when you're dealing with a crisis, you do it from worst-case scenario and work your way back. I think a lot of the ones that we're running into is that we have to keep things as normal as possible and deal with normalcy. But when you're dealing with a crisis and pandemic like we're dealing with COVID-19, you got to think worst-case scenario. And I always work my way back. I always felt like worst-case scenario, we don't play none this year. Next best case, we play in January, which will be the spring. Next best case, you play in October. It was never a case where I thought we would be ready to play whenever school started. I just didn't think time was going to allow us a chance to be in a position to play, and I think everybody's finding that out now.
Okay. And with that approach, did it have you start talking to your staff and your student-athletes in a different mindset of what to really expect before it actually goes public?
Correct, but we told our players back in May what those time frames were. We began to talk to our players about, okay, here's a possibility of us coming in July. If we're coming in July, that's giving us a chance to possibly play in August. But that was the first scenario. Once I got past that, it was more or less like, look, guys, we're not going to make that. That's not going to happen. That's going to get canceled. We'll come in August for school, and we'll get ready to flip our schedules. Then we'll try to make sure that we put a plan in place in the fall to be able to flip it and be doing our spring in the fall. But I do think having that wisdom and knowledge in the beginning really helped us plan going forward for this coming season.
We're talking right now with Coach Dawson Odums, head football coach of the Southern Jaguars of the Southwestern Athletic Conference. Now, Coach, you talk about being ahead of the curve, and I know that there are talks right now that were initiated with the SWAC about possibly playing a spring schedule. And that sounds great, and I'm just going to throw this scenario out. There are various things going on. I came up with a couple of them, but the first one that I came up with, instead of trying to play a full spring schedule, which we know the cost effectiveness of that, and then all the other sports you got going on, would it seem feasible to have what we call a back in the groove type season? And by that, I mean having your traditional spring game that you would, which would be your inter-squad play, and then perhaps you play a second game with a rival. And I think there are enough rivals within the conference where it could still get people back in the feel of things and then get ready for the fall which would be too taxing on the student athletes trying to play a full spring schedule, then turn around and do a fall campaign?
Well, I don't think it's too taxing to play a spring schedule and turn around and play a fall schedule. I don't think it's taxing on our student athletes. I mean, you got to think these guys come in to college, and they come out of high school. Some of these guys play football, basketball, run track. Some of them play football and baseball. But these guys are used to working year-round. They're playing AAU. They're playing 7-on-7 all summer long. So they're used to being active. And who came up with the idea that football is supposed to be played in August? We have always done things that we say this is the way you're supposed to do them. Who's not to say football is not supposed to be a spring sport? I think every time you have a crisis, something new comes from it. And you always find some good. If you look for some good, you're going to find some good. If you look for some bad, you're going to find some bad. But I chose to focus on the good. I think us playing in the spring give us the opportunity to do something that had never been done, spring football. If we're able to open up, people are able to come to those games, we will have way more sellouts in the spring than we ever had in the fall. Because you're not dealing with, for the first time, NFL, possibly, and up until the day, it would have been, if FBS would have played, you wouldn't have to worry about FBS. I do believe it gives our young men a chance to play. If the stadiums are able to be open and people are able to come, I think spring football is going to be welcome just like if it was in the fall. I just really believe that. I think we're going to have new recipes on the grills when it comes to tailgating because this is new. It's crawfish season. It's kicking in. So a lot of our celebrations will be able to take place, especially here in Louisiana. I just feel that it's different. A lot of people have trouble times adjusting to difficulties, but I embrace it. I think it's what makes our world great.
Okay. Do you think this could be the wave of the future in, let's say, the two HBCU conferences, that being the SWAC and the MEAC, solely becoming a spring football conferences?
I don't know. I think if we have a lot of success, at least we'll raise some conversation. I really believe that if we were to have it this year and was able to have some success from it, I think it will bring people to the table and say, why not? But, again, it's legislation. There's a lot of things going on with your calendar. There's a lot of other entities that you have no control over that you will have to work around. But I do think for this one-time exception, this spring football schedule and playing in the spring could really do some justice to not only from a financial standpoint, but from a morale standpoint when it comes to lifting the states that you play in. And I really think that has an opportunity to play dividends down the road.
Once again, we're speaking with head football coach of the Southern Jaguars, Dawson Odums, talking about the possibilities of spring football and all other creative opportunities that present itself due to the cause and effect of the COVID virus. Now, Coach, one thing that I've always admired from afar is that you've always been an advocate for the mental well-being of your student athletes and just looking out for these guys on and off the field. With everything that has been coming on, the readjustments, I heard you talking back in May about getting your guys mentally prepared for life without football as they once upon a time knew it. Have there been any additional procedures that you've implied now during this challenging times?
No, we've been going business as usual. The best thing is that just making sure that our players know that we're concerned about them and just staying in contact with them and just checking on them and their families because you really don't know what is going on in their lives. You got to have a lot of communication. We have team meetings, and I allow my guys to be able to talk about some of the experiences that they're going through with this COVID-19, giving them a platform to be heard. And I really think that pays dividends when it comes to evaluating your team and understanding what that's about, getting their parents involved on calls and just talking to them and just keeping everybody abreast of what's going on. Our transition has been great. I think our players came back because we were transparent with our parents. We were transparent with them what our processes are like on campus. what the timetable looked like, just keeping everybody in the loop. And I think that's what you do when you're a leader. You got to keep everybody in the loop. We didn't have no hidden secrets. I mean, it was put everything on the table. A couple of weeks go by, let's update everybody, our players and their parents. And I think when you do that, you don't try to cut corners. We let them know exactly what life will be like on campus when they got back. Our players are back now. We expressed to them how important it's going to be with individual discipline, because we're a team sport, but it's going to take some individual discipline in order to be able to practice all the things that are in place in order for you to stay safe. And it's been a great transition for us, but I think that transparency has paid off in our program, especially with our parents and our players.
Very good. And speaking of transitioning, you had a couple of big names that come to the transfer portal. How does that affect the status? Well, once we've gone through this transitional period with COVID, will these guys be able to reapply for that additional year, or will they just have to move on to the next phase in their lives?
The biggest thing with transfers is that they're eligible for a year. They're not just eligible for a semester. Ability is not really up until May. So even if he plays in the springtime, that's still part of their clock. So it's still part of their eligibility clock. So we're looking at a lot of factors that's going to play out, but that's all left up to the NCAA. All we can try to do is inform our players based on the information that we receive and make sure that they make the best decision for them going forward. But all players want to play, but I think as a leader, you have to make the best decisions for those players sometimes, because competition can't supersede safety. And that's how I've always operated during this crisis, is that let's keep our players as safe as possible. But the problems I run into is that our campus is open. A lot of things are moving around. We're going to take our time as a team, introducing the weight room and introducing facilities back to our players. They're gung-ho. They're ready to get back. But we got to teach them this new way of working out, this new way of practicing. And we're going to take our time, because we know the longer we can keep them separated, the less chances of our numbers increasing from cases. So we're going to do things the right way. We don't play this fall. Of course, we're going to have to get to a point to where we're going to get back on the field. We got to put helmets on, because I just don't think from a safety standpoint, everybody's talking about safety from COVID-19. I don't believe you can get ready to go play a football season when you haven't been in pads for 10 months. We've done that. Well, we didn't have no spring ball, but we at least got a chance to go out there and do some fundamentals. When you talk about no field activities, no weight room for 10 months, again, you want to go play in January. You should have the same concern from a safety standpoint that you have about COVID-19 safety standpoint when it comes to the individuals that play football.
Very valid point on that, Coach. And I guess people are so anxious to see the competition, they forget that the preparation that it takes to have a competitive product out on the field is not just like adding water and instantly you have a legitimate program. So a point very well taken on that. And speaking of getting ready, I know the buzz has been in the air about the two additions to come to the Southwestern Athletic Conference. How do you project that coming in the near future as far as the overall spirit of competition?
I think it's going to, especially with football, I think it's going to increase our brand when you look at the SWAC as an overall football conference. I think we're going to have an opportunity to add two teams that's been able to have a lot of success. Of course, FAM come with a lot of tradition, similar to our program, got a great fan base and, just a great following. And I think it's going to create some new rivals. But at the end of the day, I still believe that we're about trying to put a product on the field when it comes from the SWAC conference that's recognizable to the world, not just our fan bases. And I think those two teams are going to benefit from it. I think our conference is going to benefit from it. And plus, I can't tell you when Southern has ever, last time maybe they played a Bethune-Cookman, how many times, but FAM is usually somebody we play year in and year out. But I think it's going to create a strong conference, especially when it comes to football. And I think it's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting for our fans, exciting for our schools, and exciting for all the head coaches to go get a chance to take on some of these guys year in and year out.
Yes, sir. Now, only thing that it might make you a little later on the teleconferences, Coach, with the two more addition teams and going in alphabetical order. I mean, your hour's going to get later and later, man.
You can go ahead and pre-record these teleconferences and play them at any time. So hopefully from a technology standpoint, we got better, I think, with the Zoom calls and with everybody having to use computers and be able to do media days and move media days. But I think with this technology, I think it's going to be a new wave of teleconferences. I think some conferences are going to figure some things out to where, you know what, we could record this on Sunday and replay it, you know, and go from there. But I don't think it has to be in order like that. I think it's some opportunities out there. But if it's still that way, we may go a little later, but we still on Central Standard Time, so we'll always be ahead of those guys on the East Coast. So we feel good about it. It'd be exciting. It'd be exciting to hear Terry Sims and Willie Simmons on the weekly teleconference and just welcome those guys and their programs to the conference.
Yes, sir. Well, Coach, we thank you so much for making yourself available with us here at the Open Mic Broadcast Network. And, of course, our custom here is that we give our guests some closing thoughts and comments. And, sir, the floor is now yours.
The biggest thing is just be safe and mask up. And best advice I can give is stop worrying about when we go play again. The best thing I heard was something on Twitter the other day is that we'll play whenever God has it for us to play. We have no control over this virus. But our wants and desires in front of what's right don't sit well with me. And I think our SWAT office, I think our administration at Southern University, I think our AD, Roman Banks, for taking the time to say, you know what, safety comes first. And whether we play, we know it's going to be some financial hardship that comes from that. But the best thing we can always make decisions is in the safety of the young men and women that represent the SWAT teams. And I'm grateful to be the head coach of a school that took safety first and foremost and working for a conference that stepped out on the limb and said, you know what, let's just move it to the spring. And I thank them for that because it took a lot of pressure off of us trying to get ready, trying to rush things through when we don't have a handle on this virus. We're going to try to get through school this semester. We're going to try to do things the right way. We're going to try to be safe as possible. And we're doing that. We all got to play our part. So be safe, mask up, practice social distancing, and make sure we wash our hands. And we can't do it enough. Go Jags.
Thank you very much, sir. He is Coach Dawson Odums of the Southern University Jaguars. I am the radio guy, Dr. Mike Prince. Thank you guys so much for joining in with us. We must exit stage left for right now, but as always, you guys be blessed. We'll see you on the other side.